Hello, my friend. I'm so excited you're here. Before you watch any more of this, please grab a notebook or open up your notes tab on your laptop. You're going to want to take a lot of notes today because you're about to learn how to book 5 profitable podcast guest interviews in the next 30 days as a founder, a coach, a healer, a consultant. And I'm going to teach you how to do this without a publicist, without a big email list, social media following, even if you don't have a 6 or 7 figure business, even if you've never guested before, if you are not a household name, if you're on the newer side to your business, even if every single thing on this list applies to you, you're still going to be able to book those 5 interviews in 30 days with the strategies that I'm going to break down for you today. And I swear you must have spidey senses because right now is the best time to get started with podcast guesting. So, Ad Age published a study this past spring that says that podcast hosts are now officially the most influential people in all of media, which is crazy. They've unseated social media influencers, they've unseated Hollywood celebrities. That is how much influence they have over consumer purchasing decisions right now, which means for you that if a podcast host introduces you, a trusted expert, to their established audience of thousands of people, right now in this climate when trust is this high, it's going to be the perfect storm for you to build authority, credibility, and to convert those listeners if you are the guest. So, cheers to being on top of this massively under-leveraged strategy. And as we're getting started, I just want to acknowledge a few reasons you might be watching this. Number one, if you are fed up with relying on social media to grow your business and build your authority, then you are definitely in good company here. I bet that's one thing most of us have in common. I also want to acknowledge that if you've dabbled in podcast guesting in the past and you didn't see a ton of success in terms of getting booked or creating ROI, you're definitely not alone there either. But what you learned today is going to change everything you thought you knew about growing your audience and converting ice cold people into brand super fans, into hot leads, into premium clients and customers. I also want to call out that you might be feeling a little nervous about your ability to do this if you've never guested before. You even might be feeling a little nervous about what it means if you are successful doing this, right? Unlocking that much visibility can be nerve wracking. But I really don't want you to worry because by the end of this training, I'm pretty confident that you're going to be excited rather than nervous. And I want you to write down one thing, one mindset shift. Wherever you're taking notes, put this at the very top of your page, okay? Visibility is not a reward for my success, it's a tool to create the success that I deserve. Okay. This is the approach that we're going to be taking. That if you want to grow your business, it needs to be really easy for a lot of people to find you. So, visibility is a tool that's going to help you unlock your next level. It's not this reward for the success that you've created up until now. Okay. Great. Let's do it. So, my goal for this masterclass is to help 2 types of people. If you are a beginner to podcast guesting, so you've done less than 10 interviews, my goal is to help you take the mystery out of getting booked. And if you're a more experienced podcast guest, my goal is to help you create more meaningful ROI from every interview that you do. So that can look like authority, hot leads, brand superfans, email list growth, sales. Sound good? So I'd love for you to just mentally clock which category you're in. Are you just getting started or are you a little bit more experienced, but you'd love to see more ROI? It's really important to know what you want to get out of this. So I like to make that distinction between the 2 groups and help you figure out which one you're in. And by the way, I know it is so easy to get distracted these days with tabs open, apps open, Instagram, kids. If you're like me, you've got a dog that barks at every falling leaf outside. I know how hard it is to stay focused. I really encourage you to create as much space for yourself as possible for the next 90 minutes or so. I promise this training is going to be so valuable and you're not going to regret watching the whole thing. So let's get into it. The strategy that I'm breaking down for you today that is proven, that's going to get you to 5 interviews in 30 days is the Profitable Podcast Tour. I promise you, this is the key to unlocking unlimited visibility, unlimited authority as the leader in your space, all the while exploding your sales off of social media because this strategy is totally algorithm free. So I'm going to teach you 3 step-by-step strategies that are going to make booking 5 interviews in just 30 days with your Profitable Podcast Tour easy. Doesn't matter what niche you're in, doesn't matter how long you've been in business, doesn't matter how many people know you exist right now. Okay. So for those who I don't know yet, my name is Kelly Moser. I am the founder of Hell Yes Media, which is a consultancy, and we help bold brands, we help women-owned brands, BIPOC-owned brands, queer-owned brands go from hidden gem to industry thought leader by creating invincible content with profitable podcasts and profitable podcast guest tours, which is what we're going to talk about today. I'm also the host of the Top 1% podcast, Aligned Success with Kelly Moser. And I've been able to leverage all of this experience to help hundreds of founders and leaders exactly like you to land their dream interviews and blow up their businesses using the secrets that I'm going to share with you today. And I just wanted to share a few quick words from some of my friends, some of the leaders in podcasting. This is Deirdre Shen. She is the founder of Capshow and the author of a book called Honey Trap Marketing, which I highly recommend. She recently called me the podcast guest whisperer, for which I am very grateful. And this other person is Alex Sanfilippo. Obviously, only one of these people is me. Hopefully, you can figure out which one. This is Alex Sanfilippo. He's the founder of PodPros, and he has very kindly called me on multiple occasions the best in the business for podcast guesting success. So these are awesome people. They have wonderful things to say about the work that we do. So I just wanted to share that with you. And the truth is, I do know a lot about podcast guesting and how to be successful with it. But this was not always the case. So I want to just take you on a quick stroll down memory lane so you can see how many times I had to fall on my face before things started making sense. So about 18 months ago, I noticed that my Instagram engagement was starting to plummet, to put it nicely. I would love to hear from all of you on Instagram. Send me a message at kelly.moser. You can see my handles right here on the slide. I would love to hear if you've also noticed any kind of change to your Instagram or Facebook engagement over the past 18 months. So when I noticed this, I started to get really sad and stressed, and I was sulking a lot. And I was trying to fix the problem for a few months before I realized that if I was talking about social media, there was an algorithm involved here. And the algorithm is a moving target that I'm never going to be able to fully figure out. So I cannot rely on a platform with an algorithm to grow my business. I needed another way to connect with and serve brand new audiences because it was so obvious to me that social media was no longer the only place I could be showing up as a business owner. And the idea of leveraging audiences that were already full of my dream clients and customers, borrowing audiences in my niche through guesting on podcasts was a no-brainer to me. And I know it's a no-brainer for you. That's why you're here watching this. Because with podcast guesting, you are getting in front of super targeted, aligned audiences that are already built, which is the opposite of what most of us are doing on social media. We're building audiences one by one. And you're not just in front of these borrowed audiences for 2.7 seconds, which is the attention span on Instagram. You're in front of them for 30 to 60 minutes. It is obviously a really good idea, right? The problem was I did not know the first thing about getting booked on podcasts. I didn't know the first thing about making this a profitable strategy. So I was like, you know what? I just got to go for it. I've just got to start and figure it out as I go. I had zero strategy. It was taking me hours just to find shows to reach out to. I had no idea if my pitches were any good. I knew that I was only booking about 1 in 50 shows that I was reaching out to, but I didn't know if that was average or really good or really bad. And when I did manage to find a spot on a show, I saw zero ROI from those interviews. So nobody was reaching out to say, hey, Kelly, I heard you on such and such podcast. I really liked it. Nobody was opting into my email list. Nobody was opting in to receive my freebies. My social media accounts were not growing. My interviews were bringing in no new business whatsoever. But I knew that if I could figure this out, it would open up a floodgate of opportunities for so many amazing business owners with really important messages. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do what it takes to figure it out. So for months, this was me. For months, I was sending out pitches that never got answered. I was doing random interviews that did nothing for my brand, nothing for my business. I spent hundreds of hours throwing spaghetti at the wall. And then something interesting started to happen. I had launched my own podcast around the same time, and people were now starting to pitch me to be on my podcast. So now I was getting to be the host receiving the pitches. And all of a sudden, I could see all the mistakes that I had been making now that I was on the other side of the conversation. I was wearing the host's hat. So after months of spaghetti at the wall, I cracked the code on a method for pitching that was working like magic. And I'm going to be sharing that with you today. But then once I was getting booked as often, basically as I wanted, it took me a few more months to figure out how to make every interview profitable and worthwhile with the right kind of brand awareness, the right kind of authority, how to generate leads, the right kind of email list opt-ins, the right kind of sales. But I cracked that code too. And I'm going to share that strategy with you today as well. So you can tell why I'm so excited. I honestly, as frustrating as it was, I'm so glad that I spent all those months trying and failing and trying and failing, because this actually turned out to be even more of a unicorn strategy than I had originally thought. So all of that exhausting trial and error finally led me to a winning strategy, which is really kind of the love child of the two strategies I just mentioned. So I took the strategy to get booked plus the strategy to see predictable ROI. And I made one master monster strategy that makes podcast guesting reliable, scalable, and profitable. And that framework is what I call the profitable podcast tour, which is what you're going to learn today. As an entrepreneur, this is the only podcast guesting strategy that you need. And I want you to take everything that's not this and go like this, like you're shaking water out of your ear after getting out of the pool. The profitable podcast tour is an ROI centric, results oriented, highly intentional, highly strategic approach to podcast guesting that is the most effective way to build your brand and boost your bottom line with no algorithms. Okay. Because instead of doing what most guests are doing, which is just randomly going on whatever show will have you, talking about whatever they want to talk to you about, whenever they want to talk to you with no strategy, and doing that for an indefinite period of time, instead of doing that, a podcast tour has a specific start date, an end date, goals, a messaging strategy, a content strategy, and KPIs that you can actually measure. And we see this model of a tour leveraged in so many other industries, right? When an author publishes a book, they go on a book tour. When a singer comes out with a new album, they'll go on a concert tour. Same concept on podcasts for entrepreneurs like you who have exciting things going on in your business that you want people to know about. So a podcast tour is an intentional sprint with structure rather than a haphazard, never-ending marathon that you do once a month, this ongoing chore that's got no objective. Okay. So for most businesses, podcast guesting is just this like fun kind of hobby sort of thing that they do. And it's not a powerhouse marketing strategy because they're not doing it this way. I want to know, you can send me a message on Instagram or you can just clock it for yourself. Does the concept of a podcast tour, rather than just randomly guesting on shows here and there and everywhere forever, like what most people are doing, does this approach feel more helpful than just haphazard guesting? Hopefully it does. And hopefully it'll make even more sense as we get into the step-by-step. The reason the profitable podcast tour model works so well, at least the way I teach it, is because it's built on principles of human to human connection that actually feel good for everyone involved, not just for you. And those principles are generosity, reciprocity, and collaboration. So if you're a business owner who's got a really big heart, who genuinely wants to make a positive impact and share value with the world, this strategy is going to be magic for your brand and for your business. So for the rest of our time together, we're going to break down the 3 secrets to a profitable and successful podcast tour so that you understand the exact steps you'll need to take to make this not just a fun hobby, but an ROI powerhouse, a credibility powerhouse, and a visibility powerhouse for your business. Yes? Secret number 1 is how to launch your first profitable podcast tour, even if you don't have 10,000 followers, a big email list, a 7-figure business, 17 G-Wagons, a publicist. You don't need any of that. Okay. Secret number 2 is how to secure 5 aligned invitations in 30 days without sending sleazy pitches that make you cringe. And honestly, that podcast hosts are just going to drag and drop straight to the trash folder. I know this is something that makes people go, oh, I don't want to pitch myself. I can't do this because I don't want to pitch myself. Don't worry. The way I'm going to teach you is going to make pitching so much fun. And secret number 3 is how to turn a single 30-minute interview into $10,000 or more in sales without actually selling anything, without actually ever selling. So let's get into the good stuff. Secret number 1, how to launch your first profitable podcast tour, even if you don't have all the stuff that people think you need. Okay. So I'm excited to walk you through the step-by-step strategy for your profitable podcast tour. And I want to share where this method comes from. So one day when I was really, really frustrated with my podcast guesting strategy that was going nowhere, I was a mess getting booked. I was mucking up all my interviews. I was seeing zero ROI, that period of time. So all this was going on. I was at my in-laws one night and I picked up a book off the coffee table, and it was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I would love to hear if you have read this book. When I got to the second habit in this book, the answer that I was looking for was written on the page in front of me. And I finally understood why I had been seeing zero results from my interviews. The second habit of highly effective people, according to this book, is to start with the end in mind. Start with the end in mind. I was starting not at the end. I don't know where I was starting. I was starting with the question, what podcast do I want to be on? Right? That's a pretty intuitive first question to ask. That's what most people are doing, but it's the wrong place to start. As a business owner, the end goal for you with podcast guesting is to bring your listeners, the people who hear you on a podcast, into your world beyond the interview, right? Ultimately, we want to be bringing people somewhere after that interview is over. That's how we make this profitable. That's how we make this move the needle for our business. So that's where you need to start, where you want people to end up. So I realized that I needed to work backwards from my big business goals and reverse engineer the rest of my strategy from that goal. So the next week, I rebuilt my strategy based on this new order of operations that started with the end in mind and worked backwards. And I got booked right away with this new process. I got interviewed on a podcast. The podcast got released. And I saw like 5 people join my email list within the first day of that podcast episode getting published. This was not a huge podcast. This was a medium-sized podcast right in my niche. But those 5 people who joined my email list on that first day were more people than had ever joined my email list from all the interviews that I had done combined up until that point. So what makes the profitable podcast tour the winning strategy for podcast guesting is that every single piece of your strategy, including what you say at the end of a podcast episode as a call to action, what you say during the interview, the content that you actually pitch to the show, all of that stems from your end objective, which is your big, delicious business goal, AKA where you want people to go after they listen to your interview. So if you want to launch a wildly successful tour, this is exactly what you're going to need to do. Step 1, you're going to need to define what is that needle moving business goal that I want this tour to support? Why am I doing this, right? Is it to fill a program? Is it to promote a course? Is it to just grow my brand, grow my email list? Okay. Next, you're going to want to build a really simple, podcast friendly, very important, call to action that is optimized for the podcast listening experience so that you can bring people beyond the interview. That's where we want them to go, beyond the interview. At the very end of every podcast interview, if you listen to a podcast, if you've done a podcast, you know this. The host always asks the guest, "This was such a great interview. Thank you so much for being here. Where can our audience learn more about you and the work that you do?" You've got to remember that when people are listening to a podcast, they're almost never looking directly at their device. It's really important to understand what is happening for someone when they're listening to a podcast. What does their experience look like? Think about situations when you're listening to a podcast. You're probably driving, or maybe you're grocery shopping, maybe you're walking the dog, right? In all of those situations, you're not holding and looking at your phone. So, converting an audience through an audio only experience where they cannot see you, they're not looking at a page, they don't have their thumbs at the ready. Converting an audience there looks a lot different from converting an audience on Instagram or in an email where people are sitting with their eyes on their screen and their thumbs at the ready. So what you invite an audience to do in the last 60 seconds of a podcast interview has to be optimized for that experience where they can't see you, they can't read any words, and they probably aren't even holding their phones. Sounds tricky, but it's not. Don't worry, I'll teach you what to do. The perfect call to action is going to be unique to every business and every founder because it's got to be specific to your business model, to your goals, to your niche. So sadly, I can't give you one example of a call to action that's going to work for every business every time. But what I can do is share the three things that a solid podcast CTA absolutely has to do. Number one, it should be a logical next step for a listener based on the conversation they just heard. It should be moving them forward. Okay. A lot of people offer like side steps or even steps backwards as their call to action. So imagine that your interview is you're a nutritionist and the interview that you give is all about how to grocery shop for a family of 5 while you're on a budget. And your whole interview talks about that. You're probably not going to want your call to action, your next step, to be, hey, go download my guide to grocery shopping for a family of 5 on a budget, because a listener is going to think, I just heard her talk about that for an hour. What more is there possibly going to be for me inside of a free download? I probably don't need that. Okay. Keep that in mind. You also don't want your CTA to be a sidestep. You want it to be a next step. So if you're, let's say, an astrologer and you spend the interview, I've actually heard someone do this before, which is why I give it as an example. You're an astrologer and you spend the entire interview talking about syncing your cycles to the moon. Your call to action should not be about how to read your birth chart. That might seem like it's related, but it's not actually a logical next step of the conversation that they just heard. We heard you talk about syncing your cycles to the moon. We want more of that, but more of it, not a recap of it. The next thing your CTA should be is extremely high value, which means I never want you to just say, oh, thanks for having me. This was really fun. If you want to learn more, you can come follow me on Instagram or go to my website. We're not doing that anymore. Okay. To test whether your potential call to action is high value enough, you can run it through what I call the pullover test. So I want you to imagine that someone is driving on the highway at 70 miles an hour and they're listening to your podcast. Is your call to action so valuable, so compelling that that person who's driving would actually consider pulling over so they can take the call to action before Spotify or wherever they're listening just moves on to the next episode? Right? That happens to me all the time. I'm like listening to an episode. I want to, grab the person's information or screenshot it or something. The episode ends and Spotify's like, good luck. You're never going to see that again. Moves on. If your call to action is not pull over material, it's not high value enough. Because remember, most people are not looking at their phones ready to take an action. Click on your Instagram right this second. So your CTA has to actually interrupt what they're doing, which means it has to be really, really good. And finally, your CTA should be memorable. So if someone actually cannot pull over right now, or they're busy, they've got their hands in the toilet, they're cleaning the toilet, they actually cannot take the action right now, we'll at least make sure that they're going to remember the CTA. They're going to remember to come back to this episode. They're going to know where to find you. They'll remember that they listened to this awesome interview when they were dropping off their kids at school, and they know they want to come back to it later. So these are the three things that every CTA must accomplish. And I know you might be thinking, why are we talking about the call to action at the end of a podcast interview when I haven't even booked a show yet? Who remembers our magic phrase? It's because we're starting with the end in mind and we have to work backwards, because the CTA is going to determine what you pitch and who you pitch and how you pitch. So we're going to get into all of that too. But first, let's do an example of a good call to action. Remember, not every business is set up to accommodate this kind of CTA. So please just don't copy and paste it into your business. It will not make sense for every business. But I want you to think, instead of how can I copy and paste this, I want you to think, why does this work? And how can I take inspiration from the pieces that work and figure out what's going to work for me? So an example of a great call to action for a podcast. Let's say that you are a Pinterest expert and your goal is to bring people into your agency as a client. Your CTA could be, maybe normally you say, go to our website. You can find everything about our services there. You follow us on Instagram. That's what we're not going to do. Your call to action could be, I invite you to book a Pinterest audit with me, where I'm going to sit down with you, or someone on my team is going to sit down with you, and we're going to do a 15-minute hot audit of your Pinterest account. And you're going to walk away with 2 actionable tweaks that will help you boost your Pinterest reach by 30%. And at the end of our call, I can also share about how my agency can help you reach 500,000 new people every quarter on Pinterest. Okay. High value. It's got a specific value proposition. It's memorable. It's a logical next step for someone to take after they heard your interview, which let's say was all about, why Pinterest is the next frontier for digital marketers. Okay. It checks all the boxes. It satisfies all three circles. The next step for your podcast tour, you need to choose your signature conversion content. This is the content that you're actually going to be sharing during the episode that you're going to be interviewed about, that is going to establish you as the go-to expert in your space, in your topic, and bring your audience from cold to warm to hot. This is the content you're actually going to be pitching to the host and then actually delivering and talking about during the interview. There's a strategy to what this should be. And yes, what you talk about in an interview should be up to you to decide if you're following the right framework and the right process. What most people do, this is what I was doing too. They completely surrender the content and the angle for the conversation to the host. They'll be like, I'll just come on and talk about whatever you want. What do you need? I'll come talk about what you need. Or they'll pitch like 7 really broad general topics at one time. So instead of pitching one conversation, they'll say, hey, Kelly, I can come on your show and talk about sales, marketing, email list growth, customer retention, brand sponsorships, yada, yada, yada. Those are all really big, broad topics, and you could have a million different conversations about each one of them. The thing is, the podcast host does not know what you're the expert in, but they know you are not the expert in all of those topics and all the conversations within all those topics. And a host is not going to take the time to figure out what you are an expert in. As a guest, it's your job to lead with that. So your signature conversion content should be one specific episode idea that you can pitch and deliver, and it's the best content you can offer. Your conversion content should be one episode idea, not just one topic, one specific angle for a conversation. And to figure out what your best signature conversion content is, this is very similar to a great call to action. It's going to be different for everyone, but please make sure that it satisfies what I call the magic trifecta. So we've got another little Venn diagram here. The magic trifecta means that the signature conversion content that you're going to pitch, that one single episode idea, is incredibly profitable for you. It is the most profitable conversation that you can have. It is wildly exciting for the host, and it's extremely valuable for the audience. So it's got to be profitable for you, exciting for the host, valuable for the audience. This is something that I think a lot of people don't realize, including podcast hosts, is that a podcast host is a journalist, which means that they have to produce journalistic, newsworthy, stop the scroll content that's in integrity, but is really, really exciting and interesting. So if you can present them with one episode idea that makes them say, wow, that is a really interesting conversation. It's unique. We have not had this conversation on my show, let alone I've never heard anyone talk about this conversation. It's going to elevate my show. It's going to make me look more credible. It's going to make my show look better. They're going to book you. I know that sometimes the logic is, well, isn't it better if I give them more options? Won't that improve my chances of getting booked? No. More options just means that the host is going to feel overwhelmed faster. They're going to lose patience with your pitch faster. They're going to be like, I don't have the time or headspace to deal with this. So you need to be the leader and say, this is the one conversation, this is the best conversation that I can bring to your show, so that the only decision they have to make is, yes, I want that, or no, I don't want that. You don't have to accommodate the, oh, well, maybe this, maybe that, maybe it could be this. You only want the decision to be yes or no. And if they don't want you, that's okay. There are so many others out there that are going to want exactly that conversation that you're pitching and offering. So then, once you've got these pieces in place, the business goal, the podcast friendly CTA, the conversion content that satisfies the magic trifecta, then you get to decide who your best podcast audience is. And you get to start to think about some common threads among those people. So you're going to figure out, where are they hanging out right now? Where are they already listening? Who already has their attention? And I recommend narrowing down 16 to 32 podcasts that you're going to include on your podcast tour that you're going to pitch, that are going to give you the best chance at ROI. So for me, a really solid podcast tour is 8 to 16 really good interviews released within 8-ish weeks of each other. Okay. So with the right strategy, you can conservatively expect to be booking about half the shows you reach out to, just to manage everyone's expectations. If you can book half the shows you reach out to, that's really good. That's a lot better than 1 in 50, which is what I was doing. The profitable podcast tour model is so effective because it lets you take your most potent and profitable content around with you to brand new audiences every single time, right? Like a stadium tour, like Taylor Swift taking around the same era's show to a brand new audience every night. She's making little important tweaks, little magical tweaks that make every show unique. We're going to talk more about that in a bit. But she's sticking to the most potent and profitable concert that she has in her. I want you to do the same. Take your most potent and profitable content around with you to new audiences every time. And that is how you build your brand and build your legacy. Most businesses are not sharing enough of this signature conversion content that is their A content. They're sharing little bits and pieces of B content everywhere. And they're wondering, why aren't people coming in to work with me? Right? That's why. And with every show that you guest on, you're refining your content, you're optimizing your content, you're getting stronger in your messaging, you're optimizing the anecdotes that you're sharing, the lessons that you're teaching. Your thought leadership signature conversation gets better and better and stronger and stronger. Okay. If you follow this step-by-step process, your podcast tour is going to be successful at generating leads, building the right kind of brand awareness, the right kind of authority, and magnetizing the right kinds of clients. So that is secret strategy number 1. Let's move on to secret number 2. How to secure 5 aligned invitations in 30 days without sending sleazy pitches that make you feel gross and that podcast hosts just take and go bloop to the trash. Okay. I'm really excited to share with you my joint venture pitching method, which is the opposite of sleazy pitching that makes you feel gross and that podcast hosts send straight to the trash. This method sets you up to have 50 to 75% or more of the collaborations that you initiate, the shows that you're pitching, turn into yeses that feel so good for you and that feel so good for the host. I have to be totally honest with you. I hope that I never have to see any of the first 50 pitches that I ever sent ever again. If you were one of the people who received one of my first pitches, please don't ever send it to me. Permanently delete it from your inbox. I had just downloaded some random template from the internet. I changed a few things and I started sending that thing out. But every time I would hit send, I would get this like icky feeling in my gut. I hated that every pitch I was sending basically just read like a novel about how great I am and all this stuff I know. By the way, it didn't work at all. Pitching myself that way, the way everybody else did, the way that felt gross to me, did not work at all. But I spent months sending those just copy and paste internet template pitches, and I almost never got a response. And I knew most of them were going straight to the trash. And then one day I thought to myself, I wonder what would happen if I actually met this podcast host in real life. Like, is this what I would say to them? This crap that I wrote in this pitch? And of course, no, it wasn't, right? If I were actually in a room with these people, I'd be talking to them as human beings with their own goals and their own challenges instead of just as gatekeepers to something that I want, right? And I actually wouldn't be pitching myself at all. I would be getting curious about their goals. I would be asking them questions. I'd be trying to figure out where can I actually add value to the stuff that they're working on. So I went into my inbox and I started to take apart 10 pitches that I had gotten to be on my podcast that I had said no thank you to. And I asked myself, what would have made me say yes to this pitch? Why did this sentence rub me the wrong way? This person's clearly an expert, so why didn't this pitch get a yes from me? And I started to connect the dots from the perspective of a host. And I realized that the secret to successful pitching is actually not to pitch yourself at all, but to pitch a mutually beneficial partnership and a high quality conversation. So I started to play around with pitching in a way that actually felt a lot better. And I saw an immediate response. Okay. Remember, I told you I used to book 1 in every 50 shows that I was reaching out to. Now I was booking 1 in 3, and eventually it was half. And now it's about 80%. because I have mastered the joint venture pitching method that I'm about to walk you through that makes all that icky feeling when you're pitching yourself completely go away. So, the first step in the joint venture pitching method is to think about what is going on in the mind of a podcast host. We've got to decode their psychology. So, what do these people want? What are their goals? What are they struggling with? What's painful for them that they would really love some help with? And you don't have to figure out what those answers are because I'm going to give you the answers. So, most podcast hosts have four big problems. Almost every podcast host on the planet is experiencing at least one of these things. Number one, they wish more people were listening to their show. Number two, they are really struggling to keep up with the demand for content. Okay. Number three, they wish their podcast was making more money or that they were making more money through their podcast. And number four, they are so tired from all the work that it takes to just put on the show. Forget about actually growing it. Most people think that having a podcast is like a build it and they will come situation, and it is so not. So they're either tired of doing it themselves or they're tired of paying someone else to do it and not really seeing very good results. So you have just decoded the psychology of almost every podcast host in the world. And now that you understand what their problems are, the next step for you, and I really want to make sure that you hear this. So if you're on another tab right now, if you're answering emails, if you're like cooking dinner, just come back at least just for this one this one lesson, okay? The next step is to position yourself as the solution to those problems. Let's look at the problems again. Not enough people listening to my show. I can't make this much high quality content. This freaking podcast is not making me enough money and I'm exhausted and I'm burnt out. Those are their problems. All you need to do to get booked is position yourself as the solution to those challenges and problems. So what does this look like? Help them with their content problem by giving them that one fantastic episode idea that is your signature conversion content. Help them with their audience problem by telling them exactly how you're going to promote their episode so that new people can discover their show. New people from your network and your audience can discover their show. And by the way, you should do this even if your audiences are tiny, because every single download, every single rating and review and share on social media makes a difference to a podcast. So even if all you can offer is that you're going to share this episode with everyone who lives in your building or all the people on your block, and you'll make sure that they all listen and leave a rating and a review, if you can offer to share this episode with other people who are in the same membership as you, even if you don't own that membership, even if it's not your membership, if you can offer to share this episode with 1,000 people on social media who are all insert important audience demographic here, who are all busy moms looking for balance, you're going to start to stand out, because I cannot tell you 0% of people do this. I have never received a pitch that didn't come from someone who has watched this workshop or come to this workshop live that had this information inside of it. How the guest is going to show up to help me promote the episode. Okay. You can help them reduce their workload by making the only decision for them, yes, I want this person, or no, I don't want this person. When you pitch yourself, oh, and by the way, the money thing comes as a result of audience growth and really good content. So you're helping all four problems. When you pitch yourself in a way that makes you, as their guest, the solution to these problems, you will always get booked. Okay. Then you're going to start to initiate collaborative conversations through what I call reciprocity-based pitching. I really want for everyone to stop thinking about guesting as trying to get something that you want from someone who does not want to give it to you. That's the energy that most of us approach this with, right? I want you to start thinking about it as a joint venture partnership that's going to benefit both of you in very clear and explicit ways. So I want you to lead with what you can do for them and not why you deserve a spot on their show. Okay. Then you're going to craft a customized to that podcast pitch that's easy to read. It's easy to digest. It's not too long. It doesn't go on and on about you and your credentials. It's direct. It's to the point. It leads with value for the audience and for that podcast, for the host. It presents one killer episode idea It solves as many of their problems as possible, reduces their workload. I promise you, this kind of pitch is such a delight for a host to open because they get exactly 0 pitches like this. Not all pitches are created equal, but 99% of the pitches out there are all the same. And this kind of pitch is that 1% that's going to be different that works. You'll also want to make your pitch stand out, not because it was the flashiest, but because you led with the most value and the most generosity. So if the host reads 100 pitches that week, I really want to make sure that yours is the one that left the best impression because it was the most helpful. It was the most collaborative. It helped them solve the most of their problems. If you pitch the way everybody else pitches, your pitch is going to be pretty annoying to receive. I'm not going to lie. Hosts get a lot of pitches like that, and it's going to go straight to the trash folder. But if you pitch using the joint venture pitching method, you're just initiating collaborations that are going to benefit that show as much as, if not more, than the collaboration is going to benefit you. I just want you to check in with yourself and notice, does this method feel better than sending just endless icky pitches into an abyss that try to make you sound awesome? Because it's really not about making yourself sound like the most impressive or the most awesome. It's about making yourself the solution to the host problems. Yes? Awesome. We're ready for secret number 3, my friend. How to turn a single 30-minute interview into $10,000 or more in sales without ever actually having to sell anything. I'm so excited to share with you my method for magnetizing and monetizing. So, magnetizing new clients, monetizing your podcast guesting strategy. So, like I mentioned, after I figured out how to get booked and I was guesting on 1 to 3 podcasts a week, it still took me months before I was like seeing any kind of ROI. I was like, maybe this isn't even worth it. The worst feeling for me, honestly, was yes, the fact that I wasn't bringing new people into my business, that was annoying. But the worst part was that I felt like I wasn't even really impacting the people who were hearing these interviews, right? Nobody was like, Kelly, that interview was so great. I was hearing crickets from everyone. So I got curious about what an audience really needs to experience during an interview in order to feel excited, inspired to take some action, even if it's not coming to work with me, to feel transformed by an interview and ideally ready to take a next step. Okay. I started to observe myself as a podcast listener because I really wanted to pinpoint the moments in a podcast interview when my impression of the guest changed either for better or for worse. Because all those tiny, when you're listening to a conversation, your opinion of someone can change so quickly. Maybe even throughout this training, there have been moments when you liked me a little bit more. Maybe there were moments when you didn't like me as much. It changes so quickly when you're listening to someone. So I was curious, what did a guest say during an interview that made me really trust them? What did they say that made me feel like, oh, I really need to learn more about this person's business? I really need to learn more about what they do. I think they can help me. What did they share that made me want to buy from them, even if I had just discovered them? This was the first point of contact with them. And was there anything they said that turned me off at any point? So I listened to over 100 interviews like a scientist. Like I wasn't just listening, I was listening. And I picked up on some commonalities among the interviews that made me actually convert from cold, never heard of this person, to warm, I'm kind of interested, to I got to get on this person's email list or get into their program or hire them today. I also picked up on some commonalities that made me go, that interview was okay. I don't necessarily know if I need to interact with that person again. So I was looking for trends. And I developed a process for delivering a killer interview that transforms. And trust me, I was the ultimate tough sell. I was like, I'm coming into every interview cold. When I noticed that I was transforming from cold to warm to hot, I recognized that there were patterns that we could follow to do this with audiences when you were the guest. And so this process that I'm going to share with you right now does exactly that. It transforms cold audiences into premium buyers, even in just a 30-minute interview, 30-minute episode. And as I was being the scientist, I also realized something that had never really occurred to me before, but was actually really important, which is that the full end-to-end process of a podcast episode is actually so much longer than just what you hear during the interview. Okay. A profitable podcast guesting strategy, in order to be profitable, it has to start way before the interview starts, and it has to continue way beyond when the interview stops. So it's not just about what you say during an interview that makes or breaks your success as a guest. There are actually 11 points I identified when I was in scientist mode, 11 points along a guest's journey where they can do something to optimize for ROI, to create better outcomes for the entire podcast tour. So let's get into what those are. The magnetize and monetize framework. Step one is going to be to deliver what I call trust acceleration interviews that help you bring an audience from cold to warm to hot in a very short amount of time. And the way you do this is by keeping two things in mind. You want to lead with as much value as possible, and you want to highlight your personal values or your brand values. So, value, like the actual tangible guidance, lessons, the nuggets that they can pull away from this interview and go change their life with, that's value. And your values are the things that you care about, the things that get you up in the morning, the things that you don't agree with, the things that you take a stand for or against. Value plus values is the secret to building trust with an audience fast. So, what takes you months to do on social media because you only have people's attention for like this much time, and you're having 100 2-second interactions with them instead of one 30-minute interaction with them where you can really go deep and showcase who you are. What takes you months to do on social media, building trust, you can do in a single podcast interview in as little as 30 minutes. I really want to share with you, I know it's important to understand who you're talking to, because I think that will help you contextualize why this works so well. So there are a few stats about podcast audiences that show that these people are primed for conversion if you serve them right. These are awesome stats. Did you know that a podcast listener is much more likely than the rest of the population, so someone who doesn't necessarily identify as a podcast listener, to make over $100,000 a year? They're also much more likely to earn over $250,000 a year, actually, than the rest of the population. They're 68% more likely than the rest of the population to hold a college degree. So they're lifelong learners. They finish the entire episode 80% of the time, which means that they are highly engaged. They are hanging on your every word. And 75% of podcast listeners have reported taking some action, either to learn more about a brand or a business, or to buy from a brand or a business that they discovered on a podcast. So the quality of the content that you're sharing, thanks to your genius podcast tour strategy, plus the quality of the audience you're reaching on podcasts, is the perfect storm for conversion. These people have disposable income. They are ready and willing to invest in themselves. They are super engaged. They want to be part of a process. They want to grow and learn and develop. They have higher aspirations for themselves. They are continuing to learn and grow. And they take action. They want to invest. They want to buy. They want to learn more. Does the person I just described sound like your dream clients and customers? Chances are probably. This is who you're reaching when you are doing podcast interviews. Okay. The next piece of the magnetize and monetize formula, you want to become the host's favorite guest ever, because that is how you unlock compounded visibility and promotion. Okay. So what I mean by that is a host is not just going to talk about your interview once and then be done. They're going to talk about your interview over and over and over. If you can become the host's favorite guest ever, they're going to promote the heck out of your episode even 6 months from now. When there's a gap in their marketing, they're going to talk about it no matter when it is. And what happens when they promote your episode more? More people are going to learn about you, more people are going to fall in love with you, and they're going to come into your world because your strategy is set up to support that. So how do you become the host's favorite guest ever? You do this by making every interview special, by dropping unique, exclusive gems or teachings or lessons. You've got to think about podcasts very similarly to like People magazine, right? What do you see on the cover of People magazine? It's always J-Lo shares exclusive interview about time on set and working with such and such. And is there a feud? Like reveals all, exclusive share, exclusive, special, exciting journalistic content. It's not J-Lo gives the same interview she's given us every year since 1992, right? It's exciting. There's a reason to pick this one up over something else. Let's go back to Taylor Swift, who I think is the most brilliant marketer of our generation. She's on the Eras Tour. She's performing pretty much the same show every night, but she adds like a secret song every night. She does something special that she has not done at any other show. And so, even though her fans know the set list, they've Googled it, they know exactly what song she's going to play. She surprises them every single show with something new. She'll sing a new song, she'll wear a new outfit, and people notice. And it makes them feel like they are getting, because they are, a totally unique experience that will not be replicated anywhere else. So that's how you master the delivery of your best content every time while making it special and unique for every new audience. Because when you have an absolutely cannot miss conversation that is unlike anything an audience is going to hear anywhere else, that interview becomes like this precious asset to the podcast that's now going to help them grow because they can leverage it, right? They can say, oh my gosh, we got, I'm going to use Amy Porterfield as an example. We got Amy Porterfield on the podcast, and she talked about something that she has never shared anywhere else when it comes to course creation. This is typically something that she only keeps behind her paywall for her paying students. She shared it with us on this podcast, and it's going to help you 10x your conversion rate. I don't know, some crap like that. That is what makes a podcast interview feel like someone's got to listen to it right then and there. Okay. If your episode is strong enough, a show is going to put in the extra time, energy, effort. They're even going to put extra money into promoting it, possibly, because it's become this high value asset that they can leverage to grow the show, to reach their goals. They own the conversation, they can leverage it. The next thing you're going to want to do is to pull all 11 what I call profit levers. So these are those little things you can do to optimize ROI that start way before the interview and extend way beyond when the interview stops. So it's before, during, and after. And we've talked about a bunch of these already. If you optimize all of these opportunities, you can very easily turn a 30-minute interview into $10,000, $20,000, $40,000 in lifetime sales without ever actually hard selling, because your profitability is built right into your strategy. So these are the 11 profit levers. I want to show them to you. These are the points where you can optimize for ROI along your podcast guest journey. And remember, this starts way before the host presses record. First is in your positioning. Positioning yourself as the solution to a show's problem starts to build the foundation for a profitable podcast interview. Building out your podcast tour strategy. So what's your overall approach? Are you going to go for a brand building tour? Are you going to go for a launch tour, an evergreen tour? Choosing your podcasts. Huge opportunity here to optimize for profitability. And here's a secret tip. If you want to be on podcasts that are going to be profitable for you, avoid, like the plague, avoid shows that are only about storytelling. Okay. Avoid shows that whose description are like, come on and just share your story. We just want to hear stories. I want you to choose shows where you have the opportunity to put on your expert hat and teach and actually share something really valuable with the audience. Those are the shows that are going to let you shine as an expert. Okay. Your call to action is the next profit lever. We talked about this, right? Bringing people beyond the interview and knowing how you're going to do that before you even start recording. So never just signing off saying, bye, follow me on Instagram. See ya. Okay. I know you know that by now. The episode proposal. We talked about this too, how to narrow down in on that one conversation that's going to be the most profitable for you, the most exciting for the host, and the most valuable for the audience. Throughout the pitch process, lots of levers you can pull here, how you're managing this outreach, how you're building these relationships. Okay. Right before your interview, you're on with the host, how you're engaging with the host, how you're starting to now be their favorite guest ever. During your interview, obviously super important, right? What you actually say and do during the interview to accelerate trust. Remember, we talked about trust acceleration interviews with your audience. Then there are so many above and beyond monetization strategies that you can work into the post-interview period. This is a little too advanced for us today. This is like 3.0, but I just want you to know that they exist. And then finally, cultivating a long-term relationship with the show is going to result in recurring profit if your strategy is built up properly, right? If it's built to support profit right now, that just means that more exposure is going to compound the ROI for your business. So if you pull all 11 of these profit levers, you are going to see very, very powerful ROI from your podcast tour. Next, and this one's pretty advanced. I just want you to know about it anyway. We're not going to get into it too much today, but I just want you to know that you can create opportunities for the show to receive gain through you. And there's so many different ways you can do this. You can be super creative with this. But if a podcast host can stand to gain more from your interview that goes beyond what they can gain from any other interview that they've ever published, whose interview are they going to continue promoting the most, even 6 or 12 months from now? Okay. We're not going to get more into this here. It's a really advanced strategy, but maybe just a little journal prompt for you later. What are some creative ways that I can create opportunities for a podcast host to get more of what they want if I'm their guest? Okay. Little exercise for later. Then you are going to want to leverage your interviews to your existing audience and also to future audiences. So once you have an interview published, this is now a really powerful asset that you can leverage to magnetize more dreamy clients, not just from that podcast's audience, which you definitely can, but from your existing audience. Okay. Because there are people in your audience right now who are like 90% sure that they want to work with you or engage with your business in some way, but they don't yet see you as the go-to leader who is the best person equipped to help them. But every time you guest on a podcast, you're building credibility. You're boosting your credibility points that bring your existing audience even farther along your buyer's journey. Even if they don't listen to your podcast episode, even if they just see, oh, Kelly was interviewed on that podcast that I love. That's cool. That means that someone else trusts her. Someone else sees her as an expert enough to come on that show and share with their audience. So your perceived value, your perceived expertise, your perceived leadership grows every single time you earn a guest spot on a podcast. And your interviews also become assets to you that you can leverage to unlock all different kinds of opportunities, speaking gigs, bigger podcasts, right? All these kinds of opportunities because you have something so powerful that you can share with someone. If someone says, hey, I really think you'd be a good fit for this massive event that I'm going to do, I would love for you to be a main stage speaker. Do you have a speaking sample? You can't send them a 7-second reel. You know what I mean? This is an actual asset for your business that you can leverage over and over again. Next, you can unlock recurring visibility and therefore recurring revenue. Most people, most guests treat a podcast interview like a one-night stand. Hosts are so tired of this, of guests coming, doing an interview, and then just never sharing it. It happens all the time. Never even reaching out to the host again, checking in. Happens all the time. But if you nurture your relationships in the podcasting world, one interview is going to turn into more interviews. All podcast hosts know other podcast hosts. And since you have all of your profitable strategies in place, that extra visibility is also going to turn into recurring revenue. You could even land a residency on a great show, and you could be like Brittany in Vegas, but on your favorite podcast. Anything is possible. You could become a co-host, right? You can unlock an incredible flywheel of invitations from hosts. You can unlock invitations to speak on stages in front of high ticket masterminds, speaking at events, coaching groups, if you prioritize the lifetime value of your relationship with every podcast that you collaborate with. When you follow the magnetize and monetize framework, you never have to explicitly sell on a podcast in order to generate ROI because profitability is built right into your strategy. Okay. By the way, if you are too salesy on a podcast, your interview is going to get pulled from production. The host is going to be like, oh, all she did was sell the whole time. Pull it out. It happens all the time. The best part of this strategy that I've shared with you today is that the episodes that you record next month continue to grow month over month as that show grows because there's no algorithm with podcasting. So if you're a guest on episode 3 of a podcast and that podcast goes on to grow and grow and grow over the next 5 years, did you know that people, when they discover a podcast that they love, they go back to the beginning? So it's the beginning episodes of a podcast that always have the most listens, which is the inverse of what you see on social media. It's usually your more recent posts that have the most engagement because when you were just starting, nobody knew you were there. Nobody goes back to your first post 1,000 posts ago, but they will go back to the beginning of a podcast, of an entire podcast database, and start from the very beginning episode and listen all the way through, which is so cool. So that means that if you were to guest on 10 podcasts with these 3 frameworks, that's 10 profit generating assets that are out there marketing your brand, growing, marketing your business while you sleep, and they're growing forever. And this is how you future proof and algorithm proof your visibility and your business. So let's check in for a second. If you followed what I shared with you in secret number 1 and you built out a profitable podcast tour that would take your most potent and your most profitable content around with you to new audiences every single week or more often if you wanted to, and then you followed along with secret number 2 and you started initiating collaborations with the joint venture pitching method that position you as the solution to a podcast host's biggest problems, that gets you booked at least 50% of the time. And then you followed with secret number 3 and you started delivering trust acceleration interviews that transform audiences from cold to warm to hot. And you pulled all 11 of those profit levers along your podcast tour. Do you think you could be successful with profitable podcast guesting? Now, at this point, you're probably thinking, awesome, I am so ready to go and launch my podcast tour tomorrow. But there is something that I want to make sure you understand about doing this solo. Yes, you absolutely can do this on your own. I laid out all the steps for you today. I shared many of my very best secrets. And I truly believe that you can figure this out if you put in the time and the commitment and the focus. And as you've seen today, there are a lot of variables at play with this strategy. So if you do this alone, I promise you, you can do it. But I will also say that it's not going to work perfectly on the first try. Just because you've never done it before, how could you possibly optimize all of those variables on the first try? You could never expect to get it perfect the first time. I certainly didn't. It took me months of testing just to get booked, then months of testing on my delivery, months of testing on generating ROI, generating leads, analyzing my data. So you might get booked, but the chances that your entire strategy are going to be perfectly optimized so that your first 5 interviews convert like crazy are just not realistic. Okay. So patience and testing are so, so important. And what we didn't have the ability to do today is map out your custom strategy that's going to be the most effective, the most profitable for your specific business model and your goals and your leadership style and your communication style and your niche. So yes, you can do this on your own, and you have to be ready to spend months testing stuff to get this strategy optimized to 100%, firing on all cylinders, as profitable as it can be. Okay. The testing phase of this strategy, if you don't have help from someone who knows exactly what to do, it can be long and it can be frustrating. And I want to make sure that you are ready for all the testing that you're going to need to do if you go it alone. So step 1 is coming up with a version 1 of your strategy that's going to get your pitches accepted. What should my signature content be that I'm going to pitch? What shows should I start off pitching? What's the best structure for my pitch? What do I need to include in my media kit? What should I write in my bio? What should I include in my subject line? What should I offer the podcast in exchange? How do I articulate my leverage and really add value to the show? And if you start testing your pitch and you're not getting replies, you can't just send a new pitch to that same show every week. They're going to blacklist you. So you can't be wasting your pitching opportunities testing on shows that you really want to be on. You want them to say yes the first time. Then once you've tested the getting booked phase, you've got to test your strategy to actually be delivering your signature content and delivering your call to action to make sure it's all working. And remember, if you're doing this alone, the only way you're going to know if a strategy works is if you do your interview, you wait for it to get released, and then you wait for people to listen and you collect and analyze data. You're going to need to test your talking points, your call to action, the stories, the anecdotes that you share, the lessons that you're teaching, testing your delivery, testing your monetization strategies. And if you remember learning about the scientific method in school, oh my gosh, you know that the right way to do this is to change one variable at a time. So this can very obviously become a huge undertaking very quickly, which is why most people go, this is too hard, and they stop. And remember, because the end-to-end process of pitching a podcast to having that episode release is not a short process most of the time. So you don't have the advantage of getting instant feedback and data to inform what your next change should be. Sometimes you're waiting a month just to hear back from a podcast, or you're waiting for 3 months for that podcast episode to get released. Which means if your strategy isn't working, you're not going to know until 3 or 4 months from now. This is not efficient. It's going to get very boring. It's going to get very frustrating. And if something isn't working, it's not going to be immediately obvious to you what you should troubleshoot and tweak because you just haven't done this before. So why would you know that? So while I believe that you absolutely can do a podcast tour on your own, I have to give you a fair warning about the testing phase and really encourage you to budget at least 200, 300 hours over the next 6 months if you want this to work as well as it can possibly work. If you're a busy entrepreneur like me, I want results. I don't want to waste time. I don't have 200 to 300 hours testing that I can spend testing something. That comes out to be like 37 full 8-hour work days to get this optimized to 100% every step of the way. But if you want to work with me, and I think you're going to be blown away by the value of what I have to offer you today at the end of this masterclass. I am not offering you a high ticket program for thousands and thousands of dollars, but I am going to help you do this right the first time. I'm going to offer you something that is so efficient at getting this right the first time so you can get your interviews booked faster, released faster, people funneling into your world faster. So if you're excited about going on your first podcast tour and you want to skip the guesswork and you want to work one-on-one with me to help you build a totally custom strategy that helps you land the right interviews, magnetize the right kinds of clients in a way that leverages your unique magic and expertise, is it okay with you if I spend just a few minutes sharing about how my team and I can help you cut out like 99% of the testing time that you would otherwise have to spend so that you can master the secrets to high converting interviews faster and start getting booked and funneling people into your business faster? So you don't have to waste time experimenting and not seeing results and then just guessing and making tweaks and starting over again. Because I have helped over 200 entrepreneurs do this with success. We've helped over 200 people optimize podcast tours. We've helped over 200 people get booked. We've helped them book hundreds and hundreds of hours of podcast interviews. We have so much data on what works and what doesn't. So you'd be starting from like month 18. Okay. If you don't want to hear this part, that's totally fine. I hope you got something out of this masterclass and I wish you all the best and you can be on your merry way. But if you want a successful podcast tour in a fraction of the time it's going to take to figure it out on your own, you definitely want to keep watching. Just promise me that if you do decide to do this alone, you are going to be patient, you're going to stay committed, and you're going to grit through the testing phase. Please don't quit. It is so, so worth it. So if you do want to stick around and hear how I can help you, I am so proud to say that we lead the only high touch, high support course on the market, specifically for entrepreneurs who want to launch a profitable podcast tour in just 8 weeks. It's the only program on the market that's taught by the host of a top podcast, and it's called Hell Yes Guest. This program is not just about getting you booked, though. It's about creating a lasting, sustainable strategy. And by the way, as you are working through this course, you have unlimited one-on-one access to me that you can build once. You can build your podcast tour once, and every quarter you can come back to the content and re-strategize a brand new tour and leverage this content every quarter forever. It's also about building the skills that you need to be an effective guest so that your strategy generates the right kind of ROI for your business. So this is a done with you podcast tour program. It's not a DIY course where we never interact, and it's not a done for you service where I'm doing it for you. I'm doing this with you. I am your personal hands-on guide and coach and mentor so that every piece of your strategy, everything we talked about that you're going to have to test, every single piece of that strategy gets one-on-one feedback from me. And everything that you put in front of a podcast is 100% approved by me. So there's absolutely zero guesswork. We cut your testing time by like 99% because we know what's going to work for you on the first try. We've done this 200 plus times. And you're going to have unlimited access to me for 8 whole weeks while you plan and execute your tour. Something I am so proud of. We have operationalized this program so well and so efficiently that we deliver it. It operates like a high ticket group coaching program. But because of the way that we have operationalized it, we've managed to do it in a way that saves a lot of time. But instead of just inflating our margins, we've decided to pass the savings on to our students. Okay, so we're going to talk about that more in a second. But the amount of one-on-one support you get, it's like a high ticket group coaching program, but it's priced like a self-paced course. So just keep that in mind. So here's how it works. There is a self-paced training course that walks you step by step through setting up your entire strategy from start to finish, way before the interview starts, way beyond the interview ends, from how to actually design your tour, how to pitch, how to deliver your interviews, and how to monetize in detail. So everything that we covered today at a high level, we go deep with inside of the course. And while you're walking through the course, which is self paced, but we do offer a recommended pacing schedule so that you stay on track, you've got 8 weeks of unlimited support, feedback, and coaching from me as your mentor for every single step. I personally help you optimize your call to action. I personally help you craft your signature content. I'm a host. I know what a host is going to love and what they're going to go meh to. I help you strategize which shows are going to be your most profitable choices. And then once you're booked, I help you prepare and feel confident going into your tour. And because I am one-on-one involved with every single person's strategy, this is not a program where we accept 400 people in a class. We keep the groups really small. So it's by application only to make sure that we're a good fit to work together. We are looking for action takers who are going to show up, ask questions, work very closely with us, ask for feedback, be collaborative partners with us. If you want the results, that is the level of engagement that will be required from you. If you are active and engaged and you're asking for feedback, you are going to be successful. But I do want to make sure that you understand this is not a course that is meant to sit in your inbox and you never touch it. If you want the results, you're going to have to show up and be really engaged with me. I am here to help you. So, all of the coaching and all of the feedback support that you're going to need is delivered on demand as you need it. So, this is how we have revolutionized and reduced all of the crazy costs that are often associated with high touch programs. Anytime you have a question, anytime you need feedback, you just pop it to me into our Kajabi community anytime. And Monday to Friday, I am in there every single day. You will get your question answered within 24 business hours. You'll get the feedback, the in depth feedback that you need on your podcast tour or on your pitch within 24 business hours. So it's truly on demand as you need it. There's no time zone drama. You can be anywhere in the world. You do not have to show up and wait for 30 other people to get coached on a group coaching call before you can ask one tiny question. I'm truly at your disposal in an unlimited capacity for 8 weeks. There's no need to fit another coaching call, Zoom call into your schedule. This works around your schedule. So I've been a part of so many different coaching programs. I've led a lot of different coaching programs. We took all the barriers away from you getting the unlimited support that you need to succeed. So you can ask quick questions, you can ask long questions, you can get deep dive feedback whenever you need it. My zone of genius is being able to look at a podcast tour and know right away whether it's going to work or not. And if it's not, what we need to do to make it work. So I'll say, this part of your pitch, really strong. I think this would work better. What do you think? Or have you thought about adding this unique angle? Or have you thought about taking this slightly different approach? Change this word to this word, change this language to this language. That is the nature of the feedback that you'll be getting from me. So I won't just say, hey, you need to change this. This isn't good. I'm going to say, hey, I think we have a little bit of work to do here. What do you think about these 4 ideas? Which one stands out the most to you? Let me know, then we'll go from there. That is the nature of the feedback that you're going to be getting from me. So you won't have to spend 3 months pitching, wondering why you're just getting lukewarm responses or why your interviews aren't converting. I'm with you every step of the way, and we're going to get it right the first time. So if you're ready for all of that, this is the program that you need. And I would be so, so honored to receive your application. I would actually love to show you what the program looks like inside of Kajabi because I'm a very visual person. So this is the course portion. There is a separate Kajabi hub where we actually interact and engage, but for people's privacy, to preserve their privacy, I'm not going to show you that. But this is what the course looks like. So 5 parts plus bonuses. Think like a thought leader. This first part is all about positioning you exactly as you are today as a thought leader. You don't have to do anything else before you can become a thought leader. This is all about positioning and how you articulate the value add, what you bring to the table, and what your leverage is. Part 2, this is where you actually get into strategizing your podcast tour. At the end of this part, you submit your podcast tour roadmap to me. I sit down with it and I give you very thorough feedback on every single piece so that it's optimized. I send it back to you. We go back and forth as many times as we need until we both feel like it's perfect. Part 3, You actually go in and craft your pitch, and I walk you step by step, section by section, from subject line to bio to what you say in your first 2 sentences to what you need to include in your media kit. I help you optimize your entire pitch so it's super strong. Again, you submit that to me for feedback. We go back and forth as many times as you need. Part 4, this is where you go out and you start getting booked. I will walk you through exactly how to navigate that part of the process, what to do if you're not hearing back from shows. All you got to do is raise your hand and say, Kelly, I'm not hearing back from shows. I will sit down with you and we will audit everything that you are doing. I'll know right away what we should optimize and change. I'll make some recommendations. You'll go back out and hopefully get booked right away. And then part 5 is all about building your brand and boosting your revenue. So once you're booked, I want you to go out and focus on getting booked and delivering your interviews. And then part 5 is all about, okay, how do I leverage the interviews that I'm doing to make sure that every single one is moving the needle forward in my business? And then we've got some awesome bonuses, which I will share with you in just a moment. But that's what the program looks like. I'll show you the table of contents as well, because I will say this program is robust, but there's nothing in it that you don't need. It's comprehensive, but there is absolutely no fluff. The videos are designed to be short and to be built on top of one another like a paint by number. So you are always making progress. If you are engaging with the course material, you are making progress. I recommend spending 1 to 2 hours per week for the first 4 weeks on the course. That is the time commitment that you should expect if you want to engage with this process with us. Look, we break down every single thing that you need. These videos are super, super short and quick. So you just get through it, you build it, you move on. So that is what the program looks like. We have 2 cohorts coming up. All the details about when those cohorts are starting can be found on the landing page where you are watching this masterclass. And we're currently accepting applications for both cohorts. When a cohort is full, it's full. So please get us your application ASAP. The application link is on the page where you are watching this. There's nothing to pay for right now. Do not get your credit card out. There's nothing to pay for right now. But if you are interested in having us help you launch your podcast tour and joining one of the next 2 cohorts, get us this application ASAP. Every cohort fills in advance because we keep the group small. So if you would like to join one of our next 2 cohorts, the application takes 5 minutes and it's not binding. So if you apply, you get accepted, you can always decide, you know what, this isn't the right time for me. So let's talk about what is included if you do decide to apply and enroll with us. You'll get lifetime access to the training course, which is self-paced. It's built like a paint by number. I give you a recommended timeline to complete each piece of the course so that you can really stay on track and take advantage of the time that you have live with me. Again, I recommend about 1 to 2 hours a week over the course of our 8 weeks to really get the most out of the program. And you can come back to this content every quarter forever, because that is how often I recommend doing a podcast tour. You'll also get the 8 weeks of unlimited feedback, coaching, and support from me. I'm working one-on-one with every single student in this program, which is unheard of for the price of a self-paced course, which is how we price this course, to be getting this level of one-on-one feedback from someone. If you've ever taken a course, you know that that's just not typically the case. The cohorts start on the same date for everyone in the group. So check the page where you're watching to find out when those 2 dates are. You'll also have accountability checkpoints and challenges so that you stay on track. If you're someone who struggles with time management, we've done our very best to make this as easy as possible and manageable as possible. So you're not taking on, a massive undertaking. You're just doing what you need to do to get your strategy out in the world and get booked. And then let's talk about some bonuses for our next 2 cohorts. The first bonus we're offering to our next 2 cohorts is an incredible database of over 800 podcasts, including their contact information, that we have spent months building. This is by far the part of a podcast tour that takes the most time, is just finding the right shows, finding their contact information. So we have solved that for you. This is going to save you hundreds of hours. It is so incredibly valuable if you are in the niche of business, marketing, career, spirituality, mindset, health and wellness, lifestyle, parenting, sex and relationships. We are constantly adding to this database. So if you are thinking of applying and you're not sure if we have shows that are going to fit what you need in this database, just let us know and we can definitely add some. But that is what's included as this first really, really powerful bonus. We also do 2 live interview practice sessions as a group where you'll actually get together with your peers and give and receive feedback. So you'll actually simulate being in an interview, and I'll guide you through exactly what to do. We also have 2 networking sessions. So you can walk away from this program with new biz besties, new referrals, a new network to refer to others. And you'll have people in the group to collaborate with, which is just, I think, one of the most powerful things that you can receive from a program like this. We also have an imposter syndrome coaching session. This is something that comes up every cohort. This just imposter syndrome that comes up very often when you are starting to pitch, starting to show up for interviews. So I bring in the best coach in the biz to support my students through those emotions that can be quite sticky. If you choose to join one of our next 2 cohorts, you're going to get last dibs. So not first dibs, but last dibs on our founders pricing. Once these 2 cohorts are full, we're going to be raising the price of the program to reflect all of the value that we have added throughout our first 8 cohorts. You're also going to get access to my pitches that missed the mark training, where I walk you through real pitches that I've received. Don't worry, no private information is revealed. And I tell you exactly why I said no thank you to these and what I would have changed to turn them into a hell yes. You'll also get 2 months free on my favorite platform that's kind of like Tinder for podcasts. So you can chat directly with podcast hosts and get booked directly through this platform. 2 months of that is included if you decide to join us. And you'll also get access to my offer audit and messaging audit exercises, because now that you'll be consistently getting new eyeballs on your offers, you're going to want to make sure that they are as strong as possible and that you know exactly how to talk about them. So the value of everything that I have shared with you is just over $7,000. I think it would still be worth every penny to think about how much visibility you're going to unlock with this strategy, but I'm not going to charge you $7,000. But if I did charge you $7,000 and all it did was help you book one podcast interview, and over the next 5 years, that one interview brought you 5 clients, would it be worth $7,000 to you? I think it would for me. But because you're here with me, you can get access to the entire training program for just $997. Remember, I told you this is a high touch coaching program priced as a course. We also have a 4-month payment plan with no interest. So it's just 4 payments of $250. So when you think about the time that you're going to spend testing, if you do this solo, if you charge $500 to $1,000 as your hourly rate in your business, even if we saved you just 2 hours, which I promise we will, this investment will pay for itself. Okay. We massively over deliver in this program. 100% of our students that we surveyed said that this was 100% worth the investment. I also want to share that Hell Yes Guest is becoming the industry standard for podcast guesting. It's becoming the credential that podcast hosts are looking for to make sure that their guests are going to show up and deliver. Every host that I talk to is so excited that guests are starting to invest in their training because they're tired of bad guests who mean well, but don't really deliver to the capacity that they're hoping they will. We are also the chosen guesting partner of some of the most influential companies in the podcasting world. So you are in very, very good hands with us. So I invite you to get your application to us right now. If you are thinking that you might want to launch your tour with us in one of our next 2 cohorts, we will help you remove all the guesswork with unlimited one-on-one help from me. If you've got stuff happening in your business in the next 6 months that you would like more people to know about, if you want to explode your thought leadership in your space, establish yourself as the go-to leader in your niche in the next 6 months, submitting your application is going to help you lock in all of this good stuff. Submitting your application, again, is not binding. So if you apply, you get accepted, you decide not right now, that's totally fine. But if you want to secure these bonuses and this price and make sure that you get a spot in one of our next 2 cohorts, you're going to want to submit your application to us as soon as you can. It takes 5 minutes. Remember, our next 2 cohorts are the last chance to receive founders pricing, and all of the details about when the cohorts begin are on the landing page where you are watching this masterclass right now. So let's do a quick recap. I first want to share with you a few incredible people who've gone through the program and the results that they've created. So Ariel, brand new coach. She is a postpartum coach for women. She was starting her business from scratch. She came into this program because she was like, I can either spend the next year trying to grow by like 1,000 people on Instagram, or I can go to where my people already are and deliver my message to them in a way that they're already paying attention. They're already gathered in those spaces. She had such a strong signature content angle for her conversation that her pitch was being snapped up left and right. She's booked 18 interviews. I'm sure it's more since then, since the last time I chatted with her. She was in one of our first cohorts, but in our first cohort alone, during the time that she spent in the program, 18 interviews were booked. Alini is a course launch and strategist. She is someone who has spent a lot of time doing social media content that was not converting for her, that was not bringing new people into her world. She did 2 podcast interviews, and then she went on vacation for 2 weeks, like right after those interviews got released. And she said, I did not touch social media. I did not touch my business on vacation. And she came back to 12 sales calls booked from those 2 podcasts alone that generated within 3 weeks $40,000. Now, keep in mind that she nailed her signature content. She nailed her call to action. She was on the right podcast. All of that is 100% possible for you, but there's strategy involved. And I worked very closely with Alini in this program. She was not a private client. She achieved this success through this program. We worked together and got the feedback. So that is why you've really got to show up and get the feedback from me and get the coaching. It's so, so important. Caroline, I want to share Caroline's story because, first of all, she's booking 70% of the podcast she reaches out to, which is incredible. But her audience is very sophisticated. They're not on Instagram. She is an executive coach for super high performing leaders, people who are like in the C suite or either just about to enter the C suite. They're not sitting on TikTok all day. You know what I mean? So if you sense that your ideal client is also someone who's a little bit more sophisticated, who's taking a podcast out for a run, then rather than sitting for an hour and scrolling on TikTok, she's a great example that yes, you are, if you feel that hunch, you're right. Your people are listening to podcasts if they are a more sophisticated audience. And I wanted to shout out Yen because she's brand new to her coaching business. She is a coach for cancer survivors, which is something that I was so excited to be able to help her get booked because of this incredible niche that she serves. And even though she was starting her business from zero, and she has a small Instagram following I believe under 1,000 followers. She was booking top 5% podcasts because her strategy was so dialed in. So it doesn't matter what niche you're in, when you started, doesn't matter how many Instagram followers you have. You can see from this breadth of results that my students have created, that this strategy works for you. We dial the strategy to meet you where you are, not the other way around. I want to shout out Shannon, who had more sales calls booked from one podcast interview than from an entire year trying to grow on Instagram. Again, Shannon is a curriculum expert. And for her, we really figured out, for her, it was all about positioning. What are the right shows that want to hear from someone like you? What are the right people that need to hear from someone like you? And what is the content that they need to receive from you in order to get on that Calendly, right? And figure out, how can I book a call with Shannon ASAP? So she had tremendous success that's converting so well for her. I want to share a couple more things from other students so you can see a variety of different niches. Chrissy is an authenticity coach. She said, I'm getting more people into my world, onto my email list. It's literally changed the trajectory of my business. She was going through a big pivot and she was like, I want to do this program so that I can get back out there with the message that I actually want people to hear. Like what I've been talking about on Instagram for the last 2 years, I don't really care if people hear that anymore. I'm going through a pivot and my new message is what I want to lead with. So that's why she had so much success in this program, is that we really dialed in what was that new message and who needed to hear it. Yen, again, I just love this quote from her. By far the best business investment I've made to date. I feel like I've enrolled in a Harvard MBA course, not because it's complicated, but because it's just so thorough. And I will say this curriculum is very well done because I'm a busy person. I don't like fluff. I want to get straight to the point and I want results. So please keep in mind that that is how I created this curriculum for you. Fabian says Kelly's curriculum is so comprehensive. It gives you the insight, the support, and confidence to break into the podcasting space. You won't regret the investment. And Fabian is a cultural movement specialist, which is so awesome. Risa says, amazing from top to bottom. I booked 10 podcasts and used the same strategy to land magazine articles and pitch speaking events. Signing up for Hell Yes Guest is an absolute must. This strategy is applied. You can apply this to any place where there is an opportunity for you to lead and be seen and be heard. And Risa was a fantastic example of how transferable the strategy is. Risa is also a nervous system coach. Samantha, who is a systems expert, says, I didn't realize how much strategy goes into who you're pitching. Oh, so true. Kelly made it super clear and easy to build a foundation that can last you a lifetime. This is not a strategy that you need to like pay me for every time you want to use it. This is a strategy that you will have in your tool belt for life. So next year, if you launch a new offer or if you publish a book, you're going to have the strategy at your fingertips that you can just check back in with, make tweaks, and get back out there with it. Blythe, who is a creative agency owner, says if you're looking to expand your business reach, this is the only program that you need. Thank you, Blythe. I appreciate that. Ella says there is so much valuable information with no fluff. I've been able to apply this for myself and a few clients of mine who are looking to get on into more guesting, which is awesome. Kelly, who's an attorney. So Kelly's is interesting because she does trademark stuff, which is like not the sexiest, necessarily the sexiest topic of conversation. But because we dialed in her signature content so well, she was sending out pitches and having hosts be like, when can you come on the show? Tomorrow? Like when can this happen? We made her content interesting, which is what I will help each and every one of you do if you come and join me in the program as well. There is no content that we can't make interesting. So if you're like, I don't know, I'm a taxidermist. I've like sell life insurance. Trust me, we will make it interesting. I promise you. Brittany, who is a courage coach, says my CTA is working so well. I'm consistently getting signups for my programs after every interview that I do, which is the whole point. I also want to share with you that I know sometimes when you're choosing to invest in something, it's like, if I could only just see the content before I invest, that would be so helpful. So, what we do is we offer a 2-week guarantee. If you get in and you decide, you take a look around, you can look at all the content. We don't keep anything hidden. Get in. If you decide that this was not the right investment for you at this time, all you have to do is let us know within 2 weeks of enrolling, and we will refund you 100%. No questions asked. You don't have to show anything or prove anything. We'll just refund you. So if you are ready to get going and apply, this is what the application looks like. You'll find the application on the landing page where you are right now. Click on that application. It will take you to a page that looks like this. It's a 5-minute type form. It's super simple. And we will be back to you within 7 days. 7 days. Okay. Whenever you join, you can start the content right away, even if the cohort doesn't kick off for another 6 weeks or a couple months, excuse me, couple months. So you can actually get in and start engaging with the content right away. Let's chat about some questions that you might not know you have. Wait, what is this? This is the best question. Wait, what is this? This is a Done With You podcast tour program that teaches you how to leverage podcast guesting to grow your business, fill your programs, build your credibility, build brand awareness. Okay. How long is it? You get lifetime access to the course portion, the curriculum portion, and you get 8 weeks of unlimited, on-demand, one-on-one support from me. When does it start? We've got 2 cohorts coming up that we are enrolling for right now. We are enrolling for both right now. So check out the page where you're watching this, the landing page. Look for the apply now. Look for the details about when the next cohort is. You'll find everything right on that page. Who is this for? Our students are coaches, healers, therapists, dietitians, sex workers, founders of product-based businesses, tech entrepreneurs, counselors, course educators. If you run a business and you have some kind of digital footprint, you do a portion of your marketing digitally and you want to grow it, this program is for you. We have worked with veterinarians. We've worked with professional knitters. We have worked with musicians. We've worked with authors, artists. Try us. If you're not sure, just send me a message. You can see my Instagram right here. Say, I'm a XYZ. Have you ever worked with someone like me? Will I have success in this program? I will tell you with 100% honesty whether I think you'll be successful or not. Is my niche included? Will this be right for my niche? This is a question I get a lot. So we've worked extensively with entrepreneurs in the niches of business, marketing, health and wellness, entertainment, sex and relationships, parenting, spirituality, personal development. If you're not sure if your niche is going to work, just send me a message and we can have a 100% honest chat about it. How much time should I plan to spend? Recommend spending 1 to 2 hours per week for your first 4 weeks at least. That's really how long it takes to nail down your strategy. Some people do it in like 3 days, but taking a comfortable pace, this is how much time I would recommend. After that, after your strategy is dialed in, it's really up to you how much time you want to spend on outreach and actually doing your interviews. I'd recommend an hour a week on managing your outreach and an hour a week doing your interviews as you're testing and optimizing your strategy. How much access are you actually getting to me? We've created a system where all of my students have unlimited access to me for 8 whole weeks on demand as you need me. It's like having me on speed dial in your pocket. So you don't have to wait a week for the next coaching call to ask me one question and maybe not even really get a straight answer from me. I'm personally responding to every question and every request for feedback within 24 business hours. Remember, high touch group coaching program priced as a self-paced course. Will you help me nail down my CTA and signature content? Yes. This is mostly what we do together. I personally help every single student create the perfect CTA, the perfect signature content that is 100% tailored to your business model, your niche, and your goals. I know exactly what's going to make a host say yes. And it is extremely, extremely important to me that every student receive that level of feedback and help. This is another really important question. How far along do I need to be in my business? You must have an offer already in place. It either needs to be already available or pretty close to being available. If you're at the very beginning stages of your business where you don't have an offer yet, you're not really sure who it's for, put this on the back burner and come back to it when you've got an offer. But that's all you need. When you know what your offer is, that could be one-on-one coaching, it could be consulting on a retainer, it could be a course, a membership, a physical product, events, a book, a group coaching program. If you know what that is, then you're ready to guest and you'll have a much easier time in the program if you know what that is than if you don't. What if I can't get booked? Oh, I'm missing a question. I'll answer that one. What if I can't get booked? If you are showing up to the program and you're doing the work and you're asking questions, you're asking me for feedback, you're engaged with the program, you redeem all your bonuses, you're checking all the boxes, you're going to get booked. There has not been anyone who showed up and engaged that we were not able to get booked. If you let this sit in your inbox and you never engage with it, I can't guarantee you're going to get booked. But if you do all the things that I just mentioned and you haven't gotten booked, you haven't booked your first podcast by the end of the program, we'll just keep working with you until you do. So that's really the reason to show up, be engaged, do the work. Should I start my own podcast or do this program first? Do this first. The reason you probably want to start your podcast is because you want to grow your brand, you want to generate leads for your business, right? Guesting on other podcasts is a much easier and more efficient and more more productive way to do that than by building your own podcast from scratch. Okay? Because the audiences you're reaching are already built and you can take your most potent and profitable signature content around to new audiences every time. Whereas with your own podcast, you're growing your audience one by one. It's not a build it and they will come situation. It's very similar to growing an Instagram account. It's dedicated, hard work to build an audience and deliver them content that they actually want every week. It's kind of like saying, would you rather host a live event for 10,000 people where you have to schedule all the speakers, sell all the tickets, organize the venue, set up the chairs, and clean up? Or would you rather just speak at a 10,000 person event where you just had to show up and deliver value and then you could leave? Okay. So you'd reach the audience either way. And if you're just showing up and speaking at events, you can do 5 events a quarter, right? And reach a lot more people instead of only reaching the people who come to the event that you host. So my philosophy is start with guesting for 6 months. If you still really feel that itch, if you still feel like you need your own podcast after that time, then go ahead and start one. But guesting is going to scratch the itch for you if brand awareness and lead generation are your goals. Okay. Oh, there we go. I just had them inverted. If you have another question, send me, well, two things. If you know you want to apply, you've just got a few questions, head to the application on the landing page where you are watching this masterclass and fill out the application. There's a space for you to share your questions and we'll get back to you within a week. If you need questions answered before you apply, DM me on Instagram at kelly.moser and we can chat through whatever you need. Okay. Thank you so much for watching this masterclass. I hope you are walking away with some really powerful nuggets. If you have any questions about what you learned today, if you have any questions about Hell Yes Guest, find me on Instagram at kelly.moser and we will chat about anything that you need to chat through. I'm sending you so much love and I cannot wait to hear you on your favorite podcast very soon.